Coming up today here on the Raiders Report, I am going to be ranking the top 10 free agent targets to sign before training camp. For those that do not know, the Raiders training camp this offseason, rookies got to report July 17th, and veterans report July 22nd. At the time that I am making this video, Las Vegas has $36.2 million in salary cap space, which is the 5th most in the NFL. Now, some of you might be sitting there going, Mitch, well, I don't know if the Raiders are going to go out and they're going to add a player. I don't know if the Raiders are going to go out and add a player either. But I can honestly look at every single person that watches this video in the middle of June, and I can say I honestly would go out and I would target multiple different players because I believe that this team can get better. And if you think that this team can get better, then like the video because you're going to like this video. I also know what Pete Carroll had to say about adding a player before training camp, and if Pete Carroll is saying things like this, I think you're crazy to just shut the door and say that the Raiders aren't going to make a move. So here's what Pete had to say. You're either competing or you're not. We ain't letting up now. There's no time to turn away from having a chance to get a little bit better, so we'll be on it. That's what Pete Carroll had to say on adding a player before training camp, and I'm going to make you this promise. If the Raiders sign any of the players that I talk about today, I will be going live. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure those notifications are turned on because we're going to turn this thing into a shit show if any of these players sign. Now, these rankings are going to go from 10, and I'm going to go all the way down to 1. 1 being the number 1 player I want the Raiders to go out and get. Coming in here at number 10, it's defensive tackle Jonathan Bullard. And when you look at these rankings here, it is a mixture based on need. It is a mixture based on price tag, and it is a mixture based on how much I think that they would fit with this team overall. You can also sprinkle in some coaching connections as well. Bullard has played in 34 games and started in 31 the past 2 seasons. Back-to-back solid seasons with the Minnesota Vikings. He also has that coaching connection with Pete Carroll, who he played under in 2020. To me, I look at this move not being so much as like, we need to add Bullard, but I do think that he's a better option than Lecky Fotu. I wouldn't say that he's a better option than Adam Butler, but if you are legitimately concerned about the injury of Christian Wilkins, and I'm telling you this right now, I am somebody who is legitimately concerned about the injury to Christian Wilkins. I do think that Jonathan Bullard, because of his coaching connection, because it's not going to cost you a lot of money, and because he's been able to prove to you that he has been able to stay healthy over the past 2 seasons, is just somebody to keep in mind that you could add at a very cheap price tag, which is why he ended up making this top 10 list. Let's go to number 9 here, and we're going to list Jordan Whitehead as a safety defensive back because I think for the Raiders, you got to look at some of these secondary players as just secondary players where I don't know if it makes as much sense to list certain guys as a free safety, as a strong safety, because it's been looked at, it's been reported that Jeremy Chinn's been getting a lot of work at the box. Now, he's not a nickel, but he's been getting a lot of work at that nickel third safety spot because that's what Patrick Graham likes to do. For a guy like Whitehead, he's 28 years old with 101 games started in his career, won a Super Bowl with Tom Brady and John Spytek, and anytime there's a coaching connection, I'm going to put those players into this equation. And he's played mainly free safety, but he also does give you at least a little bit of versatility in the box, in the slot, which he played last season. And for Las Vegas, I believe that free safety is the biggest need for this football team, and considering the fact that he's coming off a year where he had 79 tackles, 3 PBUs, and comes from that John Spytek tree, I do think that Whitehead could be a player that's not going to cost you a ton of money, but could give you some of that reliability on the back end, because right now, the back end of this defense is scaring the hell out of me, especially if we don't have 100% healthy Christian Wilkins, because if we're not able to generate pressure with 4, this defense is going to struggle. I'm telling you that right now. Let's go to number 8 here, and it's going to be the only wide receiver on this list. And yes, I am saying that I would sign Keenan Allen over Jordan Whitehead and over Jonathan Bullard, but you at least got to hear my reasoning behind it. The only way you're going to go out and get Keenan Allen is if you're not confident in Dante Thornton Jr., you're not confident in Trey Tucker, and you're not confident in Jack Besh. I'll be very clear. Everything that I've heard so far around the Raiders, they are extremely confident in all 3 of those players. They like Brock Bowers. They expect big things out of Michael Mayer, and they also really projecting Jacoby Myers to have a good season. The only reason why I'm putting Keenan Allen on this list is simply because if the Raiders get to training camp, or if the Raiders are like, you know what, I need another option for Geno Smith, the only way they're bringing in Keenan Allen is if glass breaks in case of emergency, then you go out and you get Allen. Why? He's worked with the Raiders wide receiver coach Chris Beatty from 2021 to 2024 with the Chargers, and also followed him to Chicago. He started at least 10 games in every year since 2017, and he was a really reliable option for Caleb Williams last season. Don't get me wrong. I want to believe in the hype of Trey Tucker this offseason. I want to believe in the hype of Jack Besh and Dante Thornton of what they can be. But if we're not 100% confident in our defense, then I really think that we need to assure that we have one of the best offenses humanly possible. And I get it. Keenan Allen grew up a Raiders fan. He's been a Chargers entire career. But I don't think that you can disagree with the fact that Allen would make our offense better. We'd have a lot more depth and might push another guy out a little bit. But to me, Keenan Allen is more of a, if we absolutely need to do it to make sure Geno Smith and this offense can click, well, then I'm okay with the idea of it. Let's go to number 7 here. It's going to be cornerback Rasul Douglas, and I'm going to throw him on this list because, again, long, lanky, outside corner, and quite frankly, I think Pete Carroll is almost the perfect coach for somebody like Douglas that's 29, 30 years old. They're kind of in this point in their career where, you know, they want to show that, hey, I was a Pro Bowler a few years ago, and I am still a starting caliber corner. I also know that he played with Eric Stokes from 2021 to 2023, so there's some familiarity there at least, and that's when Douglas was playing the best version of his football. He's got the size. He's a physical dude, which is something that I know Carroll looks for, and again, long, lanky, athletic guy. He's coming off probably one of the worst years of his career with a 59.2 overall PFF grade, but ultimately, the reason why the Raiders would go out and I think and get a guy like Douglas, and you can see a lot of games played underneath his belt, it's because there is some unfamiliarity with a Jacorian Bennett, with a Darian Porter, with an Eric Stokes. And if you're concerned that you got a young cornerback room, I don't think it's the worst idea ever to bring somebody in who's been a Pro Bowl in the past few seasons, somebody who's 30 years old, and somebody who is regarded as being just a pro's pro, because that's what Douglas is. Douglas was cut from multiple NFL teams, the Raiders being one of those teams back in 2021, ended up making the Green Bay Packers and ended up becoming a Pro Bowler on that team. To me, at this point in the offseason, I want somebody that's coachable, and I want somebody that's shown you that they can do it. And right now, if Rasul Douglas was signed, he should be walking into this team going, hey, you guys cut me once before. Remember what happened? I'm going to become a Pro Bowler this season. And I like somebody that's got a chip on their shoulder, and I think we'd get Rasul Douglas with a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. Let's go to number 6 here, and it's going to be cornerback Stephon Gilmore. He's probably the oldest player on this list. I'm not going to lie to y'all. And in the last 3 seasons, 48 games played, 48 games started. He's played 180 games in his career, and I do think that Gilmore probably would be the best corner on this team. That's just me being a betting man. I'm not saying that I think Darian Porter's got higher upside. I'm not saying that I think Jacorian Bennett's got higher upside. But I'm saying right now, if I'm in a game, it's one-on-one, I wouldn't mind Stephon Gilmore out there being my cornerback. He played with Tom Brady in New England from 2017 to 2019, so there is at least a little bit of a connection there, and I get it. Brady's not a coach, and he's not in the front office. He is one of the part owners, and he does have some say of what this team does. You've seen the reports on him not wanting Sam Darnold. He did allow a 94.1 passer rating last season, which was the worst of his career, but I do sit back and I go, can Stephon Gilmore help out the Raiders? I think yes. I also would look at what he's done the past 4 seasons where he was with Carolina in 2021, still played okay. Then brand new home in Indiana, played well. Brand new home in Dallas, played well. Brand new home in Minnesota. We're talking about a player that has shown you that he can show up, and I get it. Father Time is undefeated. But I do also think that sometimes you just got to look at players that are just different human beings, and Stephon Gilmore at one point was the best player on defense in the NFL, 2016 NFL Player of the Year, long time ago. But when you have guys that are difference makers, and I hope that I don't offend people comparing Stephon Gilmore to Charles Woodson, but I do think that could Gilmore potentially be in that next phase of his career where you put him back there at safety. They did it with Patrick Peterson. We've seen that. And those are the type of players that when you're a difference maker, and Gilmore has been a difference maker his entire career, can you put him at corner? Can you also put him at safety? Because of that versatility is why I'm putting a 34-year-old Stephon Gilmore in my top 6. Before I get into my top 5, though, 4th of July, it's right around the corner. And my dad is a scary dude to be around 4th of July. My guy is a pyromaniac. You could ask him, how many fingers does he have? The answer is not going to be 10. What I would like to be able to get him, though, is a Raiders shirt, and maybe you're just like me where you're like, you know what? I would love to be able to wear something Raiders-related on 4th of July because I don't have many red, white, or blue T-shirts. I really, truly do not. Now, I got some red, white, and blue bathing trunks, which I think actually would go perfectly here with my Raiders football shirt for the great 4th of July. So go to chatsports.com/RaidersUSA. I'm also somebody where when I think of what I do on 4th of July, I drink a lot of beers, I chillax by the pool, and I eat a ton of awesome food. When I do all of those things, I try to wear a shirt that I'm not worried if it gets dirty a little bit. And I think a red, white, and blue Raider shirt is an easy shirt that I can wear every single 4th of July and not sweat about it. Chatsports.com/RaidersUSA. And if you have any extra tips for my dad so he doesn't blow his hands off, please let him down in the comments. Let's go to number 5 here on the list. And it's going to be safety defensive back Quandre Diggs. And I have Diggs up here higher than some of these other players. Not because I think Diggs is better than Gilmore. Not because I think Diggs is better than Rasul Douglas. I think it's because of the price tag. I think Diggs is going to be much cheaper than those two players that I just mentioned. Maybe Diggs and Douglas are probably a little bit closer in terms of price tag, but safety is a bigger need than corner. So therefore, Diggs is up here. 32 years old, 8 games played last season, 145 games played in his career. 5 years, though, of Pete Carroll. And the best version of Diggs was with Pete Carroll. And I get it. Those years are a little bit behind him. But a 73.2 overall PFF grade last season, was solid in the run game, was solid in coverage. And if the Raiders right now are implementing this 3-safety look, which they have been under Patrick Graham for a long time, I like Jeremy Chinn playing up near the box, playing this linebacker safety role. I don't love Isaiah Paul-Mal playing free safety, but if you're telling me right now our 3rd safety and our 4th safety, which by all accounts is what's being reported, is Lonnie Johnson Jr. and Thomas Harper, that does concern me. So I would feel a lot better about this Raiders secondary if it was Quandre Diggs, Isaiah Paul-Mal, and Jeremy Chinn out there as your 3 safeties instead of Isaiah Paul-Mal, Lonnie Johnson Jr., and Jeremy Chinn. And I think a lot of people would agree with that statement. Let's go to number 4 here. I'm going to go nickel corner Mike Hilton. And nickel is one of these positions that I'm a little bit confused of what the Raiders' necessarily plan is, and maybe they just want to go with extra safeties. 31 years old, but he still can play at a high level. 4 straight years of a 70-plus PFF grade. Also has been teammates the past few seasons with Jermaine Pratt, who the Raiders just signed and now is the best linebacker on this team. 23 starts the past 2 seasons, and look at those numbers the past 2 years. 157 tackles, 13 PBUs, 3 INTs, 24 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. This is a player who's not afraid to get his nose dirty, not afraid to lay a tackle, and he's not afraid to do exactly what the job is being asked. And I think sometimes when you're a nickel corner, you're kind of looked at as being an undersized player. And Hilton is a little bit more of these undersized guys at 5'9", 185 pounds, but he also kind of has like that Amik Robertson dog mentality. And I know Amik's not a member of this team anymore, but I think every Raider fan resonates with that statement right there because in the nickel, I want a dog. And I think when you have that dog mentality that's got a coaching connection that also has, a need, you add all those together. I think Mike Hilton is a player that's also not going to break the bank. He's up there in age, but it would be a good role model for some of these younger players on our team. Let's go to number 3 here on my free agent targets for the Las Vegas Raiders. I'm going to throw in Jadeveon Clowney at defensive end. This Raiders regime has shown me that they are interested in tweeners, and what do I call tweeners? Defensive end, defensive tackles. 15 sacks the past 2 seasons, and he can play defensive end, and he can play defensive tackle. He can also line up as an outside stand-up linebacker, which Rob Leonard has done a great job with. Played for Pete Carroll in 2019, 650 snaps, had a PFF grade of 87.3 in that year, and because the Raiders are concerned about the Christian Wilkins injury, I don't know if there's a defensive tackle out there that you're going to be able to add to this team and go, you know what, this guy helps me replace Wilkins. It's not going to happen. In fact, I did a Christian Wilkins replacement video earlier in the week. Please go check it out. To me, what I would try to do is make the defensive line the best as humanly possible. And the player that makes the Raiders defensive line the best humanly possible that you can add on the open market, it's Jadeveon Clowney. To me, I think it makes a lot more sense to put Clowney in at defensive end, at defensive tackle, and almost use him and Tyree Wilson as this kind of rotation. That, to me, makes a lot more sense instead of the Raiders putting out a Zach Carter, instead of the Raiders putting out a maybe a Jonnu Lalu. Yes, Clowney's going to cost some money, but I also think that Clowney has got to be looking at himself in the mirror here at 32 years old in his career, and he's got to be going, man, imagine what is my next step here. I would probably want to have a career year to try to get to that next step. I had a career year with Pete in 2019, and man, this guy, what they just did with Caleb Von Chasen from Carolina, I would love to be able to show him what I can do. Because I think Clowney with Rob Leonard and the Raiders could have one of the best seasons of his career, and I do truly mean that. Before I get into my top 2 targets here on the open market for the Raiders, here are just some honorable mentions. I'll still put Kyzir White in here at linebacker, and I only put that more as of like, this team is really, really out on Amari Gaynor. I don't think that they are. I like Amari Gaynor a lot. But if they're unconfident with their linebacker room, maybe they go Kyzir. If they're looking for some extra depth at corner, Shaquill Griffin came in for a visit. Asante Samuel Jr. is probably one of the top outside corners out there. He just doesn't really fit with what Pete Carroll looks for. And then Quinton Jefferson and Austin Johnson, 2 other defensive tackles that have ties to Pete and this regime. Also Patrick Graham, that I think could be mentioned if Christian Wilkins is in fact out. Let's go to number 2 here on the list. It's going to be Julian Blackmon, defensive back safety, and played last season for the Indianapolis Colts. Now, he's going to be 27 years old this season, 62 games started over the past 5 seasons, and I say this often on this show, but it's one of my favorite things that I look for in a player, and I think in real life, you want to find somebody that's coachable. You want to find somebody that shows improvement. 7 interceptions the last 2 seasons with 174 tackles. That PFF coverage grade of 72.6 in 2023 and a 73.5 in 2024. Julian Blackmon has gotten better every single season that he's been in the NFL. Now, if you're a coaching staff that sits back there and goes, you know what? I have a lot of confidence in my ability to coach up defensive backs. I have a lot of confidence in my defensive coaching staff in general to coach up DBs. I don't know how you don't look at what Julian Blackmon has done at 26 years old and say, you know what? That's a guy that I would love to be able to go out there, and that's a guy I would love to be able to get. If you're the Raiders and you are really trying to plan for the next 3 to 4 years, I would offer Julian Blackmon a 3-year contract, and I would try to tie him with this regime, Spytek, Adam Butler, Max Crosby, Pete Carroll. I would try to tie him in because then you're getting him at 27, 28, 29. Those are really good years to have a safety. We kind of just saw, a little bit with Trevon Merrick, and I get it. Merrick a little bit of a different age, but still, my point is, Julian Blackmon, long-term, I think is number 1 on this list. However, if we're talking about this year and this year only, the number 1 player that the Raiders could go out and get, I'm going to say is safety Justin Simmons. And the other reason why I'm putting Simmons above Blackmon is I'm not saying that Blackmon can't turn into the safety that Simmons is. That's not what I'm saying at all. I am just saying I think if the Raiders go out and get somebody, it's somebody that they believe can help them this year because that's what they need help with. They need a lot of help in that secondary this year. He has started at least 12 games every year since 2017. A lot of games played there. Games played, 134. Games started, 124. First DB coach ever, Joe Woods, who right now is the Raiders secondary coach. Brian Stark was with the Denver Broncos from 2012 to 2024. That's the Raiders assistant general manager. So you got a coaching connection and a front office connection. Also, 2 interceptions every year of his career. He's got AFC West experience, which I know Mark Davis really, truly values. Because the Raiders front is potentially missing Christian Wilkins, I want somebody that I know I can rely on to be a true center fielder. And I do truly believe that Justin Simmons, yes, at 31 years old, can still be that true center fielder because when you look at how this defense is being built, we need a true center fielder. And we need somebody that we can rely on. Now, I'm hoping that, he doesn't hit that 31 age, and he's fallen off a cliff. But I still think Simmons can get it done, and I still think that he can show you that he can get it done at a high level. For that reason, he's the number 1 free agent I would go out and target if I was Pete Carroll and John Spytek. One more time here, my top 10 Las Vegas Raiders free agent targets for the Silver and Black in the month of June. If you want to take a screenshot of this, and if you want to post it on Instagram or on Twitter, I am at Mitchell Renz 365, and please, don't be afraid to argue with me. Don't be afraid to share the video as well. The more people we get to watch, the better and better these shows can continue to get. So I'm going to ask you this question. If the Raiders can only sign 1 NFL free agent, who should it be? Let me know that answer down below in the comment section. For me, the number 1 free agent that the Raiders should go out and get is Justin Simmons because it fills the biggest team need. It also helps out your secondary, potentially replace the loss of being able to get pressure on your front 4 with Christian Wilkins. But Justin Simmons, Julian Blackmon, Jadeveon Clowney, Mike Hilton, There's a lot of different names that I'd be really fired up if the Raiders went out and got.